Welcome to the Foil Life Podcast, where we talk about foiling and the lifestyles of those who enjoy these great sports. All right, Dave, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We are kicking off a 3-part mini-series of ALUULA today, so I'm very excited to learn more about it, where it's made, a lot of questions. I've seen it on the beach, and I've seen it around absolutely everywhere. So I know it's present in the Windsports, but myself, I have no idea where else it's present. And then there's also a lot of other people that are wondering, why should I use this yellow fabric?
Well, why don't I tell you a little bit about what ALUULA is, and we'll
Sure.
start from there. So ALUULA isn't necessarily a fabric per se, not just the gold fabric that you would see on the beach. ALUULA is a process. And what we're doing at ALUULA is we're fusing technical films to ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene. And what is ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene, you may ask? Dyneema is a branded version of ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene. And it's a very unique polymer in that it's incredibly strong and incredibly durable. And its strength to weight ratio is really unrivaled unless you get into something like an aramid, which is Kevlar, or a carbon fiber. But those materials also have their own issues in terms of their fragility. In terms of the environments and making a durable, flexible fabric, ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene is really the best polymer to use. So what we're doing is we're fusing films, technical films, to UH without the use of glues. And what that does is make a material that's lighter and stronger and more durable than anything else on the market.
Now, obviously, people are going to know, like, where did this idea come from?
Where on earth did that come from?
Yes.
So ALUULA was born out of Windsports, which I think is a nice feather in the cap for Windsports to bring this level of innovation to the rest of the world. I'm sure we'll get into it a bit further along in our conversation, but ALUULA has many applications outside of Windsports now. So it started to be conceived out of the brand Ocean Rodeo, which is based on Vancouver Island here in Canada. And Richard Myerscough, who is the founder and CEO of Ocean Rodeo then, and another guy named Pete, who's a PhD senior chemist. And they were talking, and there's another guy named Ross, who is the lead designer for Ocean Rodeo. And after designing kites and eventually wings, I guess primarily kites at that point in time, because winging hadn't come about. We're talking sort of mid 2015s, 2017s. They came to the realization that everyone was using the same materials and trying to optimize them better and better. And no one was making any significant leaps forward. And the only way to really innovate in that design was with a new material. And that's where Pete started playing around with it. And the first iterations of the ALUULA process was born out.
Oh, no way.
You can imagine there were many iterations and putting a lot of different things together and different materials, different weaves, different films. And they landed on the gold fabric that you now see in the majority of Windsports.
This was done, what? Did they have a lab? Did he do it out of his garage at the start with a couple beers? Like, how did... Do you know of that kind of backstory?
Yeah, so I can't say. So I started ALUULA in 2021. I believe ALUULA launched in Windsports in 2019. So this would have been happening, a year or two before that. Yeah. I think it's a combination of things. I think that Pete has a lot of his own lab and technical machines and inputs and whatnot. And then once there was a proof of concept developed, then I believe that the initial engineers were hired to come and figure out how to commercialize it. Because to make a small plate sample or to make a meter or two, one thing is to make thousands and thousands of meters that are consistent and of high quality is a whole other ballgame.
Yeah, manufacturing. So that's when a lot harder. Manufacturing.
I've been in that business for a long time. I've worked as a product designer for over a decade in, dealing with materials and stuff. And making one bag or, one thing is, it's great, but it's relatively easy. Replicating it consistently is another thing.
So where is Richard from?
He's from Victoria. He, again, I don't have Richard's bio in front of me, but
no, that's fine.
He was an avid sailor way back in the day. And I think he did like youth national team. I think he might have gone to the Olympics for windsurfing, perhaps. And that's how Richard and Ross got together, because Ross was an avid windsurfer on the island, and we're talking like the 80s. And Ross was also like a windsurfer designer. And so they got together, and then they started Ocean Rodeo, I believe, at the end of the 90s, maybe 2000. And so they had a lot of innovation in Ocean Rodeo through the years, a lot of unique, bridle designs and bars and whatnot.
I think that's something that maybe not a lot of people know. And you were saying like the factory is based in Victoria as well.
Yeah, all the materials is manufactured in Victoria. It's a patented, proprietary process, and because the nature of the input materials are more expensive, we're able to manufacture efficiently in Victoria and still be competitive.
Oh, interesting. So the idea was born out of Ocean Rodeo, but do you know why specifically? Like why it was born for that and how it grew within that wind sports industry?
I think it was pretty obvious when those guys made the first few kites. When you have a fabric that's half the weight and twice as stiff, the performance benefits in a flying wing were pretty obvious. And so, again, I wasn't there, but I think pretty quickly ALUULA was formed, and Ocean Rodeo launched it in 2019 to the market.
Yeah, that would have been a pretty cool kind of innovation. And then also thinking about it from the people who are just trying to drive and have fun on the water, it's a cool origin story that it originates from there. What other kind of industries is ALUULA in?
Well, now we're working in performance outdoor athletics, aerospace, defense. There's all sorts of, applications where light and strong. And we've since developed many other families of fabrics beyond the gold. The gold, in fact, is pretty much unique to Windsports. It was engineered for its stiffness on the bias. So that's not just the 0-90 up and down, left, right. That's on all angles. The gold film provides additional stiffness, which is great in that application, but you wouldn't want to make a backpack out of gold. We've had many people ask for it because it's interesting. Like the story of gold is that it's become so recognizable and ubiquitous with performance that, if we have a designer from Europe, let's say, who's also a kiter, and he's like, oh no, I really want the gold, I want to make a backpack. And we just say, listen, trust me, you don't. This is not a good application for it. But we have these fabrics over here, which are much more applicable to a bag. So let's talk about those ones.
It would be cool though to have it would be cool to have.
It's really interesting how synonymous that gold has come with our brand. It actually informed some of the brand guidelines out of the gate, and it's been very helpful because it's so visible on the beach or way out on the water. You could see someone half a mile out, and that they're on an ALUULA kiter wing.
Well, yeah, because you're able to, with those performance attributes, for example, because carbon can be masked in so many different things, right? Because I've seen a couple of YouTube videos where they were talking about it's the carbon mountain bike of water sports. But if you paint carbon in a certain way, you can't even tell that it's carbon. So it's not, you might know, looking at it, for example, you might be able to tell, oh, it's lighter, whatever, this and that. But it's not as easy to see to the untrained eye that yellow is yellow with different brands and say, oh, this must be the same material, right, from the beach. Because if you have no idea what you're looking at.
I can, speaking of carbon, just for an example, and especially in the earlier days of carbon, people wanted to show off the carbon. If the bike frame builder is using carbon fiber, they want people to see that it's carbon fiber, and the buyer wants other people to see that it's carbon fiber. Yeah. Nowadays, it's much more ubiquitous, and you can just pick up the bike and you just know. I mean, for me at least, you can look at a frame and you can tell that it's not welded. It's been carefully crafted out of carbon fiber. So ALUULA, what we can say is ALUULA's got a very unique look to it. And primarily, currently, that's because of the color. But as ALUULA continues to evolve into different fabric families, that unique look will pervade.
And that does turn into an amazing marketing feature. And was there initial reticence maybe from some companies to work with that? Just be like, I'm curious. I want to go down that little rabbit hole of who was the one that designed this pitch, because I have to do some selling as well. And but before I do that, I want to kind of just look at a bit more of, so ALUULA Gold is one material that you guys are offering and that you're making.
Yep.
Is there anything else, let's say, within the Windsports genre that with other materials that you have? Because this could include tents, backpacks, kind of clothing, any of that kind of world of everybody who spends time outside, especially goes to Nitnat and gets rained on heavy. Is there anything else that you guys are working on or have already developed?
There's a lot. So I'll try not to get too far into the weeds on this one, but we have a number of fabric families. Gold is our very first one. We have other ones called Aerospace and Graphite and Duralite. And each of those fabric families were engineered with specific needs or performance characteristics. Aerospace is ultralight, as light and strong as you can go. So you'll start to see that in some canopy fabrics, spinnaker material, things like that. Graphite was originally engineered for things like packs, durability, weldability, waterproofness. And then Duralite, just unsurpassed abrasion resistance, durability, tear resistance. Actually, in many, if not most, of the gold kites and wings on the market, there are some of those materials, particularly the Duralite or some combination of Duralite and gold, that are in the seams to reinforce the seams.
Oh, interesting. How does it feel to be part of that Windsports? And like, you have an extensive background in this from coming from other industries, but how does it feel for the people that are working in it with the original the original founders in Windsports? And how's that feel to be part of that kind of whole family and to see your fabric like on water absolutely everywhere?
It's pretty cool. I mean, I'm wearing an ALUULA hat right now, and I'm in my spare time. I'm a kiter and I do some sailing as well. And like, I can walk down a dock at a yacht club and someone be like, "Hey, ALUULA, like, what do you know about ALUULA?" I'm like, "Oh, I worked there." And they're just like shocked.
Yes.
So yeah, it's pretty cool to be a part of something that's, in essence, like, has revolutionized that industry. It's created a whole new tier of product, of high performance product. And ALUULA will continue to do that. We're definitely not a one trick pony. We've got lots more coming, but it's pretty exciting, and it's fun and interesting to work with the different brands and their design and engineering teams as well, because we work with some of the best teams in the world, and it's great to see how they all work and what's important to them, and helping them to realize their vision of the products that they want to design.
Can we talk about some of your aerospace, or maybe different, like, do you guys talk squirrel suits or avalanche bags or like paragliders or para wings is what everybody's hopping on right now.
I gather.
Yeah. Had those conversations kind of happen behind the scenes?
Yeah, there's work going on all those fronts. I think in aerospace, the one that's, has been publicized is a gold-like material that's being used in space habitat. So basically like an inflatable habitat that goes in space. And so the ALUULA fabric's being used in combination with a number of other different layers, but ALUULA is in space, which is pretty exciting. And then when you think of light and strong, particularly light, anything that goes in the air is a good candidate for ALUULA, whether it's a commercial airplane or, an airship, hang gliders, all sorts of things like that, paragliders, all excellent candidates. And there is, work being done on those fronts. On the performance outdoor side, people may have seen already that we have launched our pack fabrics, and we have a number of brands in market already. And we have a lot more coming to market, which is really exciting. And so you'll continue to see that evolve. And an exciting one for us too is tent fabrics, ultralight tent fabrics. And you may see the
That would
first
be fun.
ultralight tent maybe later this year. So there's quite a bit happening outside of Windsport, but it's nice because it really complements what's going on in Windsport. And I have to say as well, having worked on both sides of this, I think Windsport still takes the prize for being the most technically demanding of our fabrics. Inflated flying objects in sandy, windy, sunny conditions top the charts of the most difficult fabrics to engineer for.
And you're going to get feedback almost instantly from us because we're always wanting the, the best performance all the time.
It is a committed community, yes.
I find that absolutely hilarious of all things in the world, right? Like, we love our community and we are part of it. But man, we are demanding with our equipment. Now, because I obviously have to sell sometimes, and I was curious genuinely what the original sales pitch was, and if you have an idea of how that story kind of went down.
Sure.
I know we have Duotone coming up on our third episode of this series, and we're going to talk to them a little bit about their R&D process and their thoughts and thinking behind that conversation. But I was just kind of curious as if you know who was the original sales guy and how that went.
Well, I mean, the original, the OG sales guy is really Richard. And he's just such a natural at that. He's really, got a vision and just goes for it. Nothing will stop him. And, I remember having conversations a few years ago with him and a couple of the original guys that ALUULA might not have happened if it wasn't for an internal project at Ocean Rodeo. And a combination of, Richard's determination, Pete's technical know-how, and then Ross's ability to build, because these new composites require different seaming and they react differently. And it's not, you can't just, swap it out for Dacron and using the exact same seaming and the same designs and say, here you go. It took a lot of iteration, a lot of field testing. And I think that's something unique to how ALUULA came about was that Ocean Rodeo and ALUULA are based in Victoria and southern Vancouver Island, where it's quite windy. And so Ross would make a new design using the fabric. It would get made in the factory overseas. It would come back. Like that afternoon, those guys would be on the water testing it right away. And they'd be like, oh, this works. This is no good. Let's change this. Ross would make adjustments to the design back over to the factory and overseas. So Ocean Rodeo was determined and launched it and really showed the industry what was possible. And I think once the first generation of kites hit the market through Ocean Rodeo, who's, a relatively small player in the industry overall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's when it raised some eyebrows, and Duotone, who already had a relationship with Ocean Rodeo. I know that Till and Richard were working together on some other things. And that's when Duotone started to work with the material and assess.
People have seen this fabric for quite a few years. And I know there's some companies that work with, let's say, version 1, version 2, version 3. And there's other companies that just release on cyclical calendars. So they'll be like 24, 25 or 23 and 25. Now, obviously, there's always been questions because the look and feel of ALUULA is similar. So, but there's a lot of stuff, I'm assuming, going on in the background. Do you guys work like an Apple where you sell a product and then have another product and have another product and like go through that sequential and let that user test? Or is it more so you fix things as you go or improve things as you go, as you find a new discovery?
I mean, the origins of ALUULA is much more rebellious and entrepreneurial. I don't know if there was a business plan written, at least at the start. And I think that's really ALUULA why it was successful, because it was like, hey, let's go, let's do this, And, Gold was launched. And I would say that when you manufacture something in volume, you start to learn a lot more about how it behaves and, best practices and how to dial it in, you're also starting to receive a lot more feedback from the field. It's like, oh, this kite has been used for 50 days in, the sun in Egypt, and let's have a look at this. How are the seams? So there was adjustments and tweaks. And again, I can't speak to this because I wasn't there, but
just an idea.
There were likely adjustments and tweaks made in manufacturing, and maybe some of the seaming guidelines as Ross worked through and saw what was working, what wasn't. Hey, can we lighten this one up? So, iterative updates and improvements to the fabric, to the construction. Now, the company went public about a year and a half ago.
That's
and
true.
So I was actually
we can get
to that in a bit.
Yeah, because Richard was one of our earliest guests when we were recording the podcast from our cars in the middle of a field, and here we are, man, we're talking. So, but he did mention that the company had just gone public not that long ago. Yeah. Obviously, congratulations. That was a huge amount of effort to bring, I think a lot of people who, and myself included, don't have an idea of how much work and effort it takes from having an idea and a conception and something. Ideas are born anywhere. He could have woke up and said, oh, that would be amazing to do this. But then to go through that process of making it real and then having your company go public, that's a very big feat. Not all ideas end up in there. And especially with you wearing a hat. You know what I mean?
The applications in all sorts of other, industries, and really performance outdoor for sure. But when you start to look at things like defense and airships and aerospace, people start to think, oh, I see what's going on here. And it's a proprietary system. And, something we haven't talked about yet, we can get into maybe a bit later, is, we're using primarily polyethylene films and fusing it to ultra high molecular weight polyethylene weaves, which makes it a monopolymer, which makes it recyclable. And with where we're going in the world, that's going to be a key benefit. And there's other things too about construction and whatnot, but maybe we'll talk about that in a few minutes.
Right. Do you know Steve Meyer from ICE? He was the original inventor of the skinny mast. So no limits. Okay, so I'm a windsurfing junkie, and we just like to go straight and blast, is what people say. But when I chatted with Steve about ICE and his his company there, based in Hood River, we once again didn't know that they had their Windsports section, which was a relatively small part of the company, but they were in defense and all these different areas. And I think that lends to us feeling a little bit safer, that it's oh, we're doing this because of our passion, because we love it, and this is a small piece of but same thing with ALUULA, right? You guys are in so many different industries. There's big contracts out there, obviously, or else the thing wouldn't be going public. It's kind of a cool little add-on piece that his company was very similar from that. And once he started developing those skinny masks, there was no going back.
It's definitely a unique story. And, I joined ALUULA to help expand our business beyond Windsports. And, but I think there's just so much proof that this is an amazing material and has so much runway ahead of it. We're just getting started. And I think especially the more savvy brands or the more savvy designers and engineers, they could see right away, we'd have a conversation, we'd send them some samples, and they'd be like, whoa, this is next generation. They knew,
that's how that goes.
Even though we were small, and we're growing quickly, they could see that this was something unique and different. And it's interesting in a lot of industries too, they'd be like, finally, something new, because and much the same as, Windsports, maybe in the late teens, you go to these trade shows and the fabrics are pretty similar. They're iterating on their current processes. Hey, we got a new weave, we got a new coating, check this out. But this was a whole jump in another direction that provided these designers and engineers with the tools that they needed to take their designs to another level.
Mm-hmm. Well, the same thing Steve said he faced with that skinny mast. You can't, once you're at a skinny mask, you can't go back to a standard. That's just, it is what it is.
If I had a nickel for everyone who said that. Yeah.
Especially on Vancouver Island. Don't we love our windsurfing out there? What does the future of ALUULA look like? I know you guys said that you're working on a bunch of different fronts. You're in a whole bunch of different industries. There's stuff we can't talk about. But is there anything cool that you can let us know of that you see coming down the pipe?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, the majority of our new developments is focused on all polyethylene fabrics. So those other fabric families that I listed off earlier, Aris, Graphite, Duralite, those are all polyethylene. And so that comes with a number of benefits. Obviously, the performance is first and foremost. They're lighter, stronger, stiffer. We've engineered them, whatever that use case is, then we can engineer for that. So there's the in-field performance, then there's the construction capabilities. So when you have a monopolymer, at least with this polyethylene fabrics, is you can do no-sew construction. So you can weld. There is early work going into 3D thermoforming. It just opens up areas of construction beyond cut and sew that are very, very interesting to brands and engineers and designers. And then the third part is sustainability. We get asked a lot about, how much energy does the factory use, or what are your input materials made with recycled inputs? And while we are making strides in those fronts, for us, the big win is full circularity. And that's not going to happen overnight, because like if you have a backpack or a wing and it's past its best before, it's just done. It's like, well, what do you do with it now? And so that's a bigger conversation coming down in the future, and working with various associations and some of the biggest brands in the world, because they're very interested in this. They see that as well as just being, this is going to be a non-negotiable at some point. So how do we deliver fabrics and systems to build where it makes it really easy to break this back down just to polyethylene, and what do the systems look like, whether that's the offcuts coming from the factories or the products themselves. And of course, the best thing is to have products that don't really ever fall apart. So engineering the fabrics and the construction of those products to be as durable and repairable as possible.
Because I know our next episode is going to be with Tyler. So we're going to deep dive kind of down that technical rabbit hole.
Oh, he'll take you there. Yeah.
that is definitely something that people are wanting to know. How easy is this stuff to repair? How long does it last? What's the abrasion resistance, sun resistance, stretch? Because we are in Windsports, will my kite or wing last longer? All those kind of basic questions of use come out. So I'm looking forward to talking with him about it. But there's anything high level you want to touch on, we could today.
Yeah, I mean, the gold fabric is not all polyethylene. So it has a mix of polyethylene and another material, and it is absolutely repairable. It's, if you get a tear or, something breaks, you can take it to your local repair shop. We have dozens now on our website. So if you go to ALUULA.com, you can see where there's places to repair, and those guys all have the proper ALUULA fabrics in our construction guides as to how to repair those. So absolutely repairable. Same thing. So some people listening will have started to see the first Aris fabrics in the wing foiling market. So there's a couple of materials that are just starting to come out. Same thing. Those repair shops are absolutely able to repair any of those materials. What's cool about those ones is, because they're all polyethylene, is that you can weld the repairs. And this is coming, but instead of cutting and sewing, you basically iron on a patch onto it. And that patch will be stronger than anything else on that wing afterwards, because it's just fused together. So coming, but definitely doable. In terms of durability, one of the unique characteristics of ultramolecular weight is it's highly UV resistant, very low water absorption. It can be flexed tens of thousands of times, folded back and forth, and it will not break. The UH is an incredible material. And so we know through our tests and our weather testing and field testing that, as the gold fabric weathers and ages, Aesthetically, it can start to, look like it's been used for a while. But when we put it on a tensile tester or tear tester, it's, just slightly below when the day it was made. So it's in fact still incredibly strong. And we benchmarked that against Dacron, which just ages differently. Dacron, as soon as you start using it, as soon as you inflate it, put it under stress, UV, whatnot, it starts to degrade in its strength. And so I'm not going to do a direct comparison here and say, oh, it's crap or anything, but no. We're very confident that while both age, they just age differently, and ALUULA remains very high performance.
People will be thinking cold, hot, obviously all that stuff, because Vancouver Island does get cold for winter stuff or winter kiting or winter, all those applications as well. But for storage, is there any concerns about going out at -20 and then just crumpling up your wing, for example, because you were mentioning that it does hold its properties very, very well in that regard?
No, I mean, UH is still very high performance in cold conditions, where, there's work being done, because some of our customers are operating
in space,
airships in the stratosphere, and it's -1 million. And one of the properties of UH is that it performs well in cold. So, I mean, I don't know where you're winging or kiting, but that's got to be.
Can you tell us what's on the starships and whatnot, or is that just behind the scenes?
I mean, you can. Yes, it's we have we're combining various weaves and with films to get different technical properties. So, what an airship might need, or a spaceship, or, a space habitat, is likely different than what an inflated airframe needs. But, it's just a scale thing. It's like, okay, well, this thing needs to stay inflated for, 6 years and under these conditions. What do you got? And it's like, okay, well, we need to beef up this and change this film and, do a couple different things to it. And it fits that technical spec. So it's, on some levels, just a different sandwich.
And my next question, because I've thought about this before and I just don't, I'm assuming it's going to be the future, but mountain bike tires, how they went tubeless.
Yeah, I have some of those.
Yeah. Are we going to go kite and wing tubeless, do you think, eventually? We'll talk Tyler tomorrow, because I was just curious about it.
Yeah, you can ask him.
Yeah.
It's, sure. I mean, let's call it the Holy Grail, but through doing a welded airframe would have massive advantages over a cut and sew one in, flying characteristics, weight, stiffness, reduction of seams. There's a lot that could happen there.
Because I know there's a lot of companies that have or are coming out with like windsurf sails that are welded like that, and that they're trying to get rid of that. So that can be interesting applications into the future. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on today to kind of tee up the ball for Tyler for our next one?
I think this has been pretty wide ranging. I think we've covered all the applications, and I hope it's shed some light, or onto the background of ALUULA. I know it's sometimes it's been a bit mysterious as to what ALUULA is and where it's come from, and so hopefully this has provided a little more background. And yeah, I think Tyler, being our Chief Scientific Officer, can really dig into some of the technical aspects that people might be interested in.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that, because there's so many applications, obviously, for us wind people in our world, but even just looking at the other industries that ALUULA is in is kind of fascinating to see how one idea goes to another, and then how those fabrics work together. And I think it gives people peace of mind as well, because if you're buying something and that they're in aerospace, that this is not the only thing they do, and it's going to be around for a while, because that testing and those contracts are not easy to obtain.
As ALUULA's grown up and increased our team and our applications, gone public, our rigor on all fronts is definitely increased dramatically. But we want to keep the sort of rebellious entrepreneurial spirit as well. Like, our competitors are typically very large and been in this business for decades, and they make great products, and I'm sure they're looking at us and looking at how to come up with an ALUULA killer. But we pride ourselves on our ability to move quickly and to be innovative and try new things. So we're going to continue doing that even as we grow.
It's good to hear. Now, next time I'm in Vic, we're going to have some, with Phoebe, obviously, have some chowder at Christie's Pub, have a beer, have a beer there. But thanks a lot for joining us today, and thanks for kicking this off. I'm looking forward to recording with Tyler next, our second episode of this series, and just deep dive down that rabbit hole, answer a lot of questions. Thanks, Dave. Enjoy Vancouver. Any good snow?
It's been cold and clear for a couple of weeks, but we got a new system coming in, so hopefully some snow coming this weekend.
Sick. All right. I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Luke. All right.
Absolutely. Cheers. Thanks, everybody.